A hairy problem. Chapter 9. Revenge of the Bumpuses. Read by Blue Bastard. The moment she woke up, Applejack had a feeling it was going to be a long day. While she had explained her previous behavior as being to blame on the natural functions of a female's reproductive system, she actually hadn't gone through her time of the month. But it appeared to her that karma was making her pay for her lies now, because there was no question about what was going on. Applejack was going through that monthly hell that all females must endure, for realsies this time. Normally, this wasn't a problem for the farm's pony. Sure, she generally had soured attitude and the cramps and other fun things like every other mare. But outside of the general things females felt during that pleasant time span, Applejack tended to get through them okay. What the issue was this time was that she was going to have to grin and bear it like nothing was going on in that spot between her hind legs. She wouldn't dare make it obvious to any pony else, especially her friends, seeing her tense up from those cramps, would expose those lies, and she really did not want to try to make up another explanation while going through the joys of marehood. Crawling out of bed, the suffering mare did her best to clean herself up and get ready for the day. Hopefully, she wouldn't need to go into town for at least the rest of the week. Her friends would be worried, certainly. But there, Applejack could hide behind the mountain of work needed to be done on the farm, and just avoid telling the real story instead of inventing lies. Frankly, she was still amazed they had believed her reasoning about why she somehow ended up in a place she truly did not like to eat food she had habitually shunned. Luckily for her, breakfast was a manageable affair, and the taste of apples appeared to be at least holding steady for now, and not falling. Unluckily for her, she was informed that Granny needed her to go into town market to pick up some exotic fruits like lemons and bananas. Already holding a strained smile because Granny had asked AJ right in the middle of a cramp, there was the poor little pony could do but agree. She just prayed that no pony would notice her act. However, on her way out of Ponyville, her faithful dog, Winona, had still been sleeping on the nice comfy spot on the ground, and Applejack couldn't resist taking a moment to rub her pet's head before continuing. Winona had enjoyed the feeling, as it woke her up, but the moment Applejack moved on, the dog smelled something extremely alarming. The only problem was it appeared to be coming from Applejack. But concerning what Winona thought the smell was an impossible truth. As the smell was fading, Winona just shook her head and decided to say good morning to the rest of the Apple family. She was the only dog in town Applejack would not be trying to run from by the end of that day.
Thank you for the tea, Miss Fluttershy. It is extremely delicious.
Ironwheel took another sip of tea the yellow Pegasus had put out for him and his assistants. It was very, very good, which was something Ironwheel had badly needed, considering how far south last night's little hunting expedition had gone.
So, if it's not too much to ask,
began Fluttershy, worried that the Minotaur would suddenly launch into another one of his self-help speeches or slogans.
Let me guess. You want to know why Ironwheel, his assistants, and that buddy showed up at your door last night, and you needed to patch them up?
Replied Ironwheel. Indeed, while injuries from the untold event had been minor, there had still been plenty of cuts and bruises that needed some TLC from the hospital mare all around.
Well, yes, pretty much.
Readjusting his posture for a better position, Ironwheel launched into a very embellished tale about how after besting a Manticore with his bare hands in single combat, he allied himself with a bunny who had been watching, and together, the two launched into a battle against a rabid pack of Timberwolves who had magically appeared. After defeating all of them, the victorious duo left the forest to fight willy-nilly, already drunk in celebration. And together, they all went to Fluttershy's cottage as they expelled too much energy to make it back to the hotel. In reality, the only true part was Ironwheel besting the Manticore. And it was mostly out of sheer dumb luck, as the Manticore ended up punching itself in the face while trying to copy Ironwheel. The moment the Manticore was down for the count, Angel, as Rambone, immediately launched himself at Ironwheel, attaching himself to the Minotaur's face, repeatedly trying to beat him into submission with nunchucks. It was a vain attempt, as the muscular half-bovine was pulled the raging rabbit off his face. It was probably going to crush Angel with one hand when both of them realized the circle of Timberwolves that had shown up and surrounded them, attracted by the commotion. Making an emergency truce, The two then engaged a seemingly infinite number of wooden wolves. Angel, for his part, actually fared decently. His small size, liberally used as a needle gun, helping keep off the giant lumbering lichens when he wasn't trying to kick them in the snout. Iron Will was also fairly handy, his tough muscular build proving impervious to any deep wounds and giant hands crumpling many an enemy by simply crushing their limbs into splinters. But in the end, the two had to retreat in the face of even more timberwolves, and eventually found themselves at base camp, where willy-nilly appeared to be trying to sing some kind of barroom dirge. An empty bottle of high-grade alcohol near them. They quickly snapped out of their drunken stupor long enough to realize the approaching onslaught of wolves, and the group ran for their lives. Except Angel, who had taken on to being on Iron Will's shoulder, lest they become Timberwolf chow. Flare-sized cottage was the closest thing they could find to shelter, but the wolves had long since given up the hunt by the time they reached their residence. Flare-side, for her part, might not see things as clearly as others. But even the heavy embellishment of the Minotaur story didn't cover the fact that Angel had obviously gotten the inspiration to go all one bunny army from Rambo, which, in turn, answered why the Pegasus kept finding it in the VCR. After giving Angel a very telling dose of the stare to let him know just how much he was in trouble, she turned to Iron Will and asked,
But that still doesn't explain why you were in the forest.
Oh, yes, that. Iron Will was in the forest so he could hunt the werewolves.
What, werewolves?
cried Fluttershy. While she did not relish her memories of flight camp, she somehow never could get them out of her head in full clarity. The mention of werewolves brought back a somewhat not-so-traumatic memory of when Rainbow Dash had been going on about some kind of creature that was pony by day, but at night was a filly-eating wolf monster. She was not comfortable with the idea that Iron Will, who even now still intimidated her, was now hunting them for some reason. Completely oblivious to the host's reaction, Will continued on.
Yeah, it's part of an ancient mate-fighting ritual that we Minotaurs have. And the male who brings werewolves' corpse to the king will be engaged to the princess as well as given a dukedom. Personally, while Iron Will doesn't mind becoming some pony everybody should know, his whole thing is really just so his parents will get off his back or doing what he loves instead, with his motivational speaking to help others be more assertive.
He did realize who his host was. Shocked, he made a rare switch to addressing himself into the first person.
Oh, right. You got to experience my health stuff firsthand. Look, that whole payment thing is beneath us, right? I'm sorry if you've been worried the whole reason I'm even here is to try and get you to pay for something you didn't like.
Visibly, Fluttershy indicated she had no such thoughts whatsoever. Internally, she took a sigh of relief, because the possibility he wanted to still be paid had been very present in her mind. It was, ironically, the Minotaur's own assertiveness trained to help her keep up appearances. Pleased the Pegasus didn't think he was grubbing for money, he switched back to third person.
Good! Anyway, Iron Will didn't expect to actually find any Timberwolves here in the Everfree. So last night was meant to be a practice run hunting with some Timberwolves. Which is ironic, come to think of it, considering the whole plan involved leading those things back to where Iron Will came in, so they could fall into traps.
Wait,
Interrupted the animal caretaker.
if you had set traps out for the Timberwolves and led them to it, but afterwards you four came here instead of tending to the traps, what happened to the Timberwolves in those traps?
A short distance away, some Timberwolves grown tired of trying to escape from the traps they had unluckily fallen into, and now lazed about waiting for somebody to come and release them. Some of them were even chatting with each other in the language known only to Timberwolves.
So, Barkley, when do you think we're going to be let loose from these things? Beats me, Birds. Maybe running those weirdos wasn't that smart of an idea, seeing how we've been trapped here for hours.
They didn't have long to wait, as at that moment a very determined Fluttershy landed in front of them, leaving a very surprised Iron Will back at her cottage only seconds before. As Sandalwood made her way around the market, she marveled at the quality of local goods. While most of it was produce, there were some handicraft stalls with wares originating outside of Ponyville, and sometimes even Equestria itself. Oh, how she wished she could spoil herself a little and buy some of the fancy wall decorations from a vendor who appeared to originate from Saudi Arabia. Alas, she could not, for while she decided to live in Ponyville due to the surprising and lucrative demand for her aromatherapy services, she was still living out of a suitcase in a hotel room. housing market in Ponyville had jumped between her initial research and actually arriving at the town. Something about property values going up due to how it was where the element bears all lived. So she had to live without the comforts of a place for herself for a little longer until she could. Hey, Sandalwood! Trying to see the source of the voice, she found herself face to face with Lyra, her partner in crime when it came to the human conspiracy scene. Hey, Lyra. What are you doing here? Not much. Just looking up for some decorations to put up in my room. Lucky, Mott grumbled Sandalwood. At least you have a room to decorate. I'm still stuck in a hotel until something opens up here in town. Really? You have no place of your own? I'm sure there's plenty of homes in the eastern section of town that... No, Lyra. The problem isn't availability. It's the pricing. I'm still a few bits short of being able to put down a payment on anything. As if to illustrate her point, Sandalwood dramatically took some bitcoins from her purse and shook them in front of Lyra before unceremoniously dropping them back into the dark unknown. Actually, I may know something that can help you out until then. Seeing Sandalwood's face perk up, Lyra took it as a cue to continue. Mama has told me that she wants to move out and get her own place with Chocolate Chip. He proposed to her not too long ago, so I suspect they'll want some private time together, if you know what I mean. That leaves me with half a flat being unused. I'd be more than happy to share the rent. That sounds great! Although, I wouldn't be surprised if she just kicks you out instead as payback for all the insanity you've caused her over the years. Acting as if Sandalwood just slapped her, Lyra dramatically exclaimed, How could you even apply such a thing? You know very well Bonnie and I are so madly in love with each other that the fact you could even think we could split up is just... Ah! Sandalwood couldn't help but crack up at Lyra's theatrics, spouting out, Wait. Does Chocolate Chip like threesomes or something? This turn got Lyra into a giggling fit. Both mares ended up having to hold each other for support. It was then Sandalwood smelled it. As an aromatherapist, she generally had a much better sense of smell than the average pony. While it was an invaluable asset for her profession, it also had some side effects of amplifying bad smells to a degree most ponies were blessed to never be able to experience. But it also sometimes picked up smells ponies normally shouldn't be able to detect, which is what alerted her to the developing situation as she tried to find a source from where the offending scent originated. Hey, Lyra? Why is Mayor Mare's dog following Applejack? Still guffawing at her own implied lesbianism, Lyra turned to see what Sandalwood was talking about. I don't know, but that certainly is weird. Actually, I don't think it's just the mayor's dog following her. Indeed, as the two ponies watched the orange mare make her way through the market, she was for some reason being followed by a growing assembly of dogs from all over town. Uh-oh. This had to be the strangest trip to the market Applejack had ever taken. She was far from oblivious to the pack of hounds following her, but initially it had just been a few of them, so choosing ignorance, the Stetson-wearing pony continued her business of grocery shopping for Granny. Then the groups of dogs got bigger, and bigger, and most noticeably all of them were male. Now concerned as to why she was being followed by almost every male dog in town, her special complications now completely insignificant in comparison, she seemed to be spending more time looking behind her at the mobile dog display, seemingly drawn by magnets to her every movement, instead of examining food. And now, for a quote from a certain abridged series. Ahem. The dogs. Sex! 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 This has been a quote from a certain abridged series. Thank you. You may continue with your live read. It was also gaining the attention of all the other ponies in the marketplace, as everything just seemed to grind to a halt, either from the just gawking or the gang of mutts pushing their way through ponies in their way. Applejack could feel a nagging sensation slowly building up from all the attention. Probably another side effect from being a werewolf, as attention to her for a long period of time was not good. She hoped that this day would not have revolved being a center of attention, but now every pony and every dog in the area was focusing on her. Reaching the final fender and quickly snatching up some cherries and just dumping the exact total in front of the confused vendor, Applejack was ready to leave the market. when she came face to face with yet another group of dogs from all over town. Except here, they were all female, and clearly angry at the pony for some reason. For a few tense seconds, not a soul dared to move, pony or canine, as the herd of female hounds drilled into the worried Applejack with their stares. Then, as if controlled by a single entity, the entire group of them charged forward in an attack. Out in public, Applejack had to fight hard not to reveal her own canine side, but that didn't stop her from bolting the hell out of there with her saddlebags flapping about. Some food was probably not going to make an attack like bananas, but Applejack would gladly buy replacements with her own spending money for Granny, if need be, as her top concern now was escape. For now, it just wasn't the females who surged forward, but the males as well, drawn to Applejack for reasons she couldn't fathom, while she concentrated on just trying to lose them. As Applejack ran towards the center of the town, Lyra and Sandalwood just stood there in confusion, like all the other ponies still in the market at just what happened. Then, the two mares looked at each other with knowing smiles as they ran off towards their goal. No pony noticed, all of them still recovering from one of the strangest events in Ponyville history. Recent meaning the previous week, anyway. Rainbow Dash was among the ponies who didn't comprehend what was happening. She had been on her way to the library, returning Daring Do and the Philosopher's Legacy, a book she thought more than made up for the failure that was the previous novel. While she smiled, a familiar orange blur racing through Ponyville and being followed by every single dog in town, save, ironically, Applejack's own dog, Winona. Curiosity gained the better of her. Rainbow pulled a few aerial maneuvers until she was able to fly up to her athletic rival and maintain speed in order to converse. "Applejack, where are you?" "No time to talk! Get Fluttershy! Maybe she'll sort this out somehow!" Sensing the desperation in the Earth Pony's voice somehow, Rainbow Dash immediately gained the altitude and flew out to Fluttershy. Applejack had to figure out if there was any pony who could stop this mess. It was Fluttershy. However, the sound of an engine rumble suddenly made itself heard, along with the sound of two shouting mares coming from behind Applejack. As the farm returned to Ponyville's widest road, with the entire canine population of the town proper giving chase, the mysterious machine came into view. "Applejack, get on!" shouted Sandalwood, who was at the front of the machine. Applejack immediately recognized it as matching the rough description of a car as told through Apple Bloom. But unlike the ramshackle wreck still in the Apple family barn, this car was more built up. It looked nothing like a cart, with four rubber-tread wheels propelling the creation forward, while the goggles-wearing Sandalwood was in what it appeared to be the driver's seat, clutching the steering wheel. As the vehicle came further into view, Applejack could make out Lyra in the back, powering the engine with her magic. "Great!" thought Applejack. "It's that sire making the machine! She come back from her lions!" Well, with the dogs gaining and the road's fork rapidly approaching, there was no choice for Applejack. With a combination of radio training and werewolf-guaranteed reflexes, she led through the street toward the car. She almost didn't make it, landing on the back panel of the vehicle, and would have slipped off had Lyra not caught her with telekinesis and sat her down in the front seat with Sandalwood. What is this thing?" shouted Applejack, not feeling completely safe in an unknown machine distant related to the two things that had caused her nothing but trouble. "This is the car your sister and friends tried to replicate!" Sandalwood shouted back, a bit of pride in her voice, before suddenly turning the wheel hard to the right. Responding immediately, the car made the turn of the fork and was heading down a much narrower road, big enough for the vehicle, but small enough that the ensemble of canines was suddenly being forced through a choke point. "And now, to test my theory," declared the aromatherapist, before giving a hoof gesture to Lyra. Having received the message, the unicorn then triggered a hinge throw attached to the back of the vehicle. A mix of Sinkweed, Bogmurl, and Lilac spit out into the street behind the car, just in time for it to meet the approaching wave of dogs. The strange-smelling mix had an immediate effect, as the dogs were now seemingly blindsided, and the few stragglers slowly peeled off their pursuit, as whatever they were chasing that involved Applejack was now lost to them. "I don't know what y'all did, but I'll thank you for it," said Applejack, relieved that. "Don't thank us just yet. You still need to explain what the hell just happened back there," replied Sandalwood. "But I don't know what—" "Then you need to know something connected to what just happened. Because if my guess is correct, and I know it is because that Relabon that Lyra dropped back there there's something very wrong with you, and for the sake of my olfactory senses, I'm going to find out what it is! Applejack could only gulp as her rescuers turned captors drove their vehicle off to a location that the farm pony really did not want to go to. Fluttershy was horrified at the scene Rainbow led her to. Everywhere there were dogs along the street, most of them looking confused and forlorn, with some of them rubbing their noses like something was agitating their ability to smell, while the majority of the females just looked like they were dumped by their boyfriends. As she landed immediately to survey the situation, she had to ask,
What exactly happened here?
All Rainbow could do was shrug. I don't know. Before I went to fetch you, it was just Applejack running down the street with the entire mutt population in town giving chase. Even AJ didn't know what was going on. Fluttershy did not give an immediate response as she began to tend to the dogs. For the most part, they were all fine, just exhausted from having run so hard. But it was the ones who had something wrong with their noses that got Fluttershy's attention. Calling upon her unique powers of animal communication beyond what normal ponies could accomplish, she learned that the male dogs had been chasing some kind of alluring scent. The female dogs also smelled it, but had instead found it disgusting and problematic. The exact rationale of what problems the smell caused seemed unclear, or at least until Fluttershy detected the aroma bomb down the street. While the dumped pile from the car had fallen to pieces, as to not leave a giant pile of environmental waste in a public walkway, the odd smell lingered. Taking in a good sniff, Fluttershy had to wonder why this specific mix was needed, as it was apparently designed to negate a certain other smell. But having unknowingly reached the same conclusion as Sandalwood through means of animal knowledge, Fluttershy couldn't make sense of what seemed to be the truth. R.D. swooped down to land next to her fillyhood friend. Fluttershy, do you have any clue what happened here? Strangely, the normally timid Pegasus looked at her rainbow-hued counterpart dead in the eyes as she replied,
I think I do, but it just doesn't make sense. Because between this scent still lingering here and what the dogs told me, the whole chase was due to the male dogs thinking Applejack was
pumping out dog pheromones! Both Lyra and Applejack had to step back in confusion and shock. Their current location was the shed Lyra had converted into a garage which to construct the car, which the hero had arrived through a back way as to avoid the crowds. But the moment the garage was closed to the outside world, Sandalwood immediately pressed questions to Applejack. I'm doing what, Lyle? You heard me. Dog pheromones. I couldn't be sure when I smelled them back at the market, but I made that quick little concoction of plants to be dumped specifically to block out that scent to those dogs. It doesn't work on pony scents, sadly. I can still smell them, and from here, I can almost certainly say that they are coming from you. Those dogs were chasing you because they thought you were, to put it bluntly, a bitch in heat. I actually think I'm going to side with Applejack in here, wondering just what you are talking about, interjected a very confused Lyra. I think I'm just having a problem where you're implying a mare is somehow producing the stuff that tells the mares of a completely different species that she wants to screw their males. Because that's one of the strangest things I've ever heard. And I've heard strange. I believe in humans for Celestia's sake! Well, I think they're too, Lyra. And I know my theory sounds very weird. But on top of everything else here AJ has done recently, is pointing out to something not being right about her. Applejack was about to try and reply, but Sandalwood looked her dead in the eye and silenced her before going in for the kill. Ever since your recovery from that bite, you have displayed some extremely unusual behaviors. 1. You easily fly off the hook and pin me to the wall at the spa with the intention to try and strangle me, even though Rarity tells me you aren't known for your anger. 2. Whatever you were momentarily distracted by at the bannered mare was most certainly not the chocolate mousse cake, even though it was delicious. 3. You somehow ended up consuming half of a BLT at the Meary, even though you're clearly not a meat eater. And 4. You're somehow pumping out camels that are inviting every male dog in town to come and try to impregnate you with ample evidence to prove that this, despite how impossible that sounds. I'm also certain that there are other sides as well I haven't noticed or haven't been around to notice. But what I've said should be enough to prove something is wrong with you, Applejack. You're trying to hide it, aren't you? Lyra just looked at Sandalwood with an expression best described as a mix between skeptical and having her jaw hit the floor. Applejack, on the other hand, was sweating up a storm and rapidly looking between Sandalwood and Lyra. There had to be some way out of this. Some way she could. No, she thought. I can't hide it from them. Sandalwood has already figured me out, more or less. Taking a sigh of defeat, Applejack looked at Lyra and Sandalwood with downcast eyes, pleading, All right, Sandalwood, you win. Please, what I'm about to reveal to you two, do not tell anyone else. I beg you, especially my family and the bears. I'll tell them when I feel the time is right. But they can't know. Not yet. Lyra and Sandalwood looked at each other before sharing a nod and looking back at Applejack. All right, spoke Sandalwood. We promise not to tell anybody else.
I want you two to pinky promise.
Sandalwood raised an eyebrow. Pinky promise? The hell is that? Lyra came over and began to whisper in Sandalwood's ear, the sign of clarification and understanding evident on the Tampone's face. Oh, so that's a pinky promise. Okay, cross my heart, hope to fly, stick a cupcake in my eye. Lyra followed suit with her own pinky promise. And I'd just like to say, as a guy wearing glasses, I don't have to worry about poking at my own eye. Satisfied, Applejack braced herself for her first transformation in other ponies.
All right, y'all might be wanting to sit down for this.
Lyra sat down immediately, thinking she had seen some crazy shit involving any pony who was the bearer of an element to heed her warnings. Sandalwood was more skeptical. Don't worry, I think I'll be fine. What the fuck? Neither Sandalwood nor Lyra could have prepared to see what was occurring before them. From their point of view, Applejack was somehow physically morphing herself in ways to form the pony, understanding from her regular form as a pony into something that still made what somewhat resembled a pony, but clearly too very wolf-like in appearance. The shot caused Sandalwood to trip in the process of backpedaling, letting her keister while still scrambling to get as far away as she could. The silence was so thick it could be cut with a knife once the transformation was done. Lyra and Sandalwood were still trying to comprehend that a real, living legend had just occurred before them. Werewolves were the stuff of myths, stories to tell kids. But they weren't supposed to exist. Yet, here one was now, Applejack having explained everything about her odd behavior in one fell swoop while raising so many more. Then, in a slightly raspier, but still distinctly accented voice, the creature spoke. I said y'all been sitting down for that, Sandalwood. Chapter 10. Protein and Perfume. If there was anything Applejack stood to have gained from revealing she was a werewolf to the two ponies in front of her, it was that she could slightly breathe easier about the whole thing. Sure, it was only letting in two ponies in on the secret, and neither of them were among her 5 closest friends. But it was a start. This is a joke, isn't it? Lyra asked shakily. Her perceptions of reality shattered after watching something out of her full-hood nightmares emerge where Applejack had been standing just moments before. You're actually a werewolf? I'm pretty sure that's what I am. What else could I be? Giant fat were-rabbit or something? Replied Applejack with a toothy grin at her own joke and trying to lighten the mood. Unfortunately, she forgot her teeth became significantly scarier while looking at werewolf form, so the attempt of humor was lost in the normal ponies, thus getting freaked out again. While Lyra's reaction to the teeth made her lose her voice, Sandalwood managed to find the ability to talk. Is that the whole transformation thing like controllable or something? I think. Usually I try and hold off on this until nighttime, when I could let this side of me out without any pony knowing. Y'all are the first ponies I've done that in front of. Namely because I doubt y'all would have believed me if I told you straight up. That's good, I guess. Do you mind turning back to the pony you usually are? To be honest, I'm trying really hard not to scream because it looks like a wolf is going to kill us.
Well, oh, right. Sorry.
Apologized the werewolf, immediately retracting her form back to that of the farm mare. While extremely freaky and unnatural looking to Sandalwood and Lyra, the reverse wasn't as horrifying as the first, and the end result was much easier on the natural instincts. But the truth was there, and both Lyra and Sandalwood glanced at each other nervously. They were now sworn into keeping a secret that, despite what could presume to be Applejack's best intentions to keep herself on a collar, could end up destroying the town, if not all Equestria, with a werewolf epidemic. But, because he pinky promised, they had no choice but to help Applejack keep her lycanthropy a secret from the entire town. It was then Applejack's stomach growled loudly, causing her to sit down on the floor out of hunger. Lyra then spoke out of sheer curiosity. So, as a werewolf, do you still eat like a pony, or are the stories true in that you can only... I'm not going to eat you. That's what you're asking. Applejack snapped, her grousiness due to the one issue she was having. Wasn't being related to a werewolf. For your information, I can still eat like a regular pony, but recently this whole werewolf thing has expanded my taste to include... She trailed off the end, unsure how to word it. Sandalwood, however, figured it out immediately. The incident at Miri. You were drawn there because you were developing a taste for meat, but didn't know it until too late, right? Applejack nodded sadly. I guess the whole thing is kind of fuzzy in my head. All I can remember is that burger. Normally I don't go anywhere near that kind of stuff, but just thinking about that burger and how delicious I thought it was, let's just say my current hunger situation isn't having helped. To both Sandalwood and AJ's surprise, Lyra seemed to perk up at what was being implied when she asked, You probably haven't been able to have meat recently, and you really could go for some right now, couldn't you? Please don't tease me about this. I haven't had meat in a long while, and it feels like I'm starving myself to death, despite trying to eat like I regularly used to and all. I'm not teasing, Applejack. I just wanted to know. You two give me a moment. I might have something that could help you out. Lyra then exited the converted shed to fetch whatever it was she was talking about. What? Lyra eats meat? Asked Applejack to Sandalwood, worried that this human assessment of Lyra might have gone too far. Beats me. Though, if she does, it would be a good thing to know, since I'm probably moving in with her soon, answered Sandalwood, now concerned about her future housing plans. At an impromptu meeting of friends at Golden Oaks, Twilight Sparkle was of the opinion Fluttershy had either gone insane or accidentally eaten hallucinogenic mushrooms, or drank the cactus juice. Fluttershy, Applejack can't have been emitting dog pheromones. It's biologically impossible. Standing her ground, mostly out of concern for Applejack possibly undergoing a crisis of species association, to which she was far more accurate than she could have known at the time, Fluttershy was insistent on her points. I never said Applejack was giving off those kinds of things, but whatever is going on with her somehow made the dogs think she was. The only problem is I don't know what else could have given every dog in town to give chase unless she thought she was in heat. Oh, for Celestia's sake, Fluttershy! Rarity said, cutting Fluttershy off. Even though we don't know what's going on with Applejack, we shouldn't be implying she's lost control of her body, such that it is somehow restoring to mating habits before the creation of Equestria and sending out signals to dogs to come around and get to know her hindquarters. Pinkie Pie, as usual, appeared to have no grasp about anything was being discussed beyond simply Applejack was being chased by a horde of dogs through town, instead of throwing out her own wild theories, such as, maybe the dogs just wanted to imitate Applejack by trying to herd her around town. Twilight, well accustomed to Pinkie's antics, didn't even bother looking at the hoppy pony as he responded with a flat, not likely. Applejack is well experienced with herding, and would have tried to lure the dogs out of town for such an event. Anyway. And she certainly didn't seem to know what was going on, interjected Rainbow. I know that all I saw was Applejack running as fast as he could and away from the giant massive dog going after her at roughly the same speed, if not a little faster. When Fluttershy and I came back, only the dogs were there and a large scattered mess of various plants. And from the way the dogs were acting, it was like the plants they were intentionally dumped there to cover some kind of smell. They were rubbing their noses like they couldn't use them at all, Fluttershy added. Twilight groaned. This is getting us nowhere. We probably should figure out what had happened to Applejack and get the answer from her. Though, I have a sneaking suspicion she might be trying to hide something from us. How can you imply such a thing, Twilight? Cried Rarity, overdramatic as usual.
You know how bad she is at lying. Her status is the element of honesty notwithstanding. But what on earth could she be trying to hide from us now? It's certainly not as bad as the time she just took up and took a job at Terry Sewing Factory because she couldn't come home without the money she promised the mayor.
Do you have any other explanations for Applejack's strange behavior, now being topped off by every dog in town getting the hots for her?
No, not really.
Thought so, Twilight said with a grin, though the self-appreciative humor she had did little to reduce the fears of what truly could be the cause for her friend's strange incidents.
What is that?
As the tearily disgusted Sandalwood, Lyra had returned, levitating what looked like a brown disk of something encased inside a bun. Just a disc, actually. There was also a very healthy amount of cheese, lettuce, tomato, reddish-brown strips inside that vague, strange sandwich. Evidence of a very small bite having been taken of the assumed food type was also visible.
This, Sandalwood, is a double bacon cheeseburger. I got it from the meadery some time ago, delivered and all because I didn't want to go all the way out there. From my research, humans apparently love these things, but I couldn't even stomach one bite of it. So it's been chilling in the freezer. Bonbon's been wanting me to get rid of it, but I figure it's still good to eat once I warm it up with a heating spell.
Sandalwood could feel her lungs trying to come up with emote.
That has got to be the most gut-wrenching thing I ever seen. Looking at it is making me. Why do? Oh, Celestia, give me a moment!
Quickly dazzling off to find a restroom to relieve her innards. Applejack, in contrast, stared at the burger, as if hypnotized by it, drool coming out of her mouth. Is that for me? Lyra nodded as she lit the meadery masterpiece with her magic, warming it up, before putting it back on the plate.
I think you better eat it before Sandy gets back, or else she might end up tossing yesterday's lunch as well.
Within seconds, Applejack was greedily chowing down on the double bacon cheeseburger. She was trying to be polite about it, and not gorge herself like a pig in a trough. But here, the fight against werewolves' instincts was not in her favor, as he wolfed it down, noisily, and more than a bit disturbingly. Lyra had to look away. She knew Applejack wasn't purposely being this animalistic in eating, but it was still unnerving. Oh, that was so good, said the now sated werewolf, smacking her lips until she remembered what she was. Sorry. This had to be both Applejack's immediate meat problem and disposing of what Bonbon called the thing living in the freezer. Applejack just gave the embarrassed Nerf Pony a small smile.
No, Piggy. I'm sure this werewolf thing is actually harder than you make it look. Now, if I was a werewolf, I'd probably still be freaking out. Has that disgusting thing been removed yet?
Called out Sandalwood from behind the door leading into the adjoining flat.
Yes, the offending foodstuff has been consumed. It is safe to enter.
Answered Lyra, prompting her future housemate to candidate re-enter the garage.
Lyra, I'm not moving in here if there are any more of those, just so you know.
Don't worry, I'm sticking with tofu burgers.
I'm not sure that even if I was a human, I could handle a diet of meat. Although, if you think about it, we as an equine species should be able to eat meat, being that we're technically omnivores, and if the meat was specifically ground up enough that... I'm not so sure how you even managed to take a bite out of that thing. No way am I making something that vomit-inducing to take a spot on my favorite foods list. Seriously, you have to be some kind of barbaric, savage monster to even like assuming a scales my...
interrupted the insulted werewolf. Sandalwood then remembered why they were all in the garage in the first place, and promptly apologized for indirectly calling Applejack barbaric, savage monster, for reasons beyond the mayor's control. Applejack easily forgave, but the truth was in Sandalwood's words. I know you didn't mean it, but y'all obviously know that werewolves are like what, and that's what I'm exactly trying to avoid. Originally, I thought I'd gotten these new weird habits of mine under control once I knew the truth. But, as the scene in town proves, I'm possibly just trying to be normal for a lost cause or something.
What? Oh, that is horseshit, and you know it, of all ponies, declared Sandalwood. I may still be new to Ponyville, but I know enough about the exploits of you and those 5 friends of yours to safely say any idea about you not beating this is well and truly wrong.
You're known for being the toughest and most dependable of the group of every pony in Equestria has dictated the main six. Giving up has never been an option for you, so why now? You don't understand. This whole werewolf thing can't be cured. Yeah. The whole incurable curse or something like that. Read the book. Watch the crappy movie. Been there, done that. But don't think it's some kind of disease. Sure, it'll bring out a lot of complications. I don't even know how you work it out getting enough meat to satisfy those carnivorous tendencies. But you can keep this under control. Consider it a disability of sorts. Except, I'm sure there are some benefits to go along with the downside, unlike most disabilities like a missing leg or being deaf. But the point is, you're an apple, and after everything I've heard of your side of the family has got to go through a lot, and yet you always end up recovering. How is this being different besides being a slightly taller hurdle for you to jump over? Applejack had to admit, Sandalwood had a point. Being a werewolf was going to be harder than he initially thought that night at Castle Everfree, but it could be manageable. At the very least, Applejack had her sense of identity. Unlike that one time Discord refers to it, so she always lied. Only thing worse than that would be her cutie mark getting switched, so she was doing something requiring talents she didn't have, like making dresses or understanding high fashion. The irony is strong with this one. You're right, I guess. But I don't know if I can keep this a secret for long. I've already had to tell you two. How much longer till some pony finds out and alerts the town? I can't even walk around town right now, because apparently every dog in town either hates my guts or wants to marry me. Oh, they want to do more than marry you. Oh, I think I can help you with that. We just need to get to the spa without attracting attention. Good thing it's close by. Sandalwood answered, a slight smile growing her face. What's that supposed to mean, exactly? Inquired the now worried Applejack. Her only worry increased when a similar smile appeared on Lyra's face, as the mid-colored unicorn made it clear what was about to happen. Don't worry, Applejack. I'm sure you just got yourself a free aromatherapy session. Words could not describe how low Applejack's heart sank. This was not going to end well one way or another. 2 hours later, the rest of the main six had split up and were looking for their lost friend. So far, no progress had been made, which was somewhat concerning, but regardless, they pressed on. Rarity, naturally, decided 2 hours of trying around town was enough reason to get a coiffure at the spa. Whilst he was there, she could ask Lois and Aloe if they had seen Applejack anywhere. She also would have asked Sandalwood, but today was her day off, which was a bit of a disappointment, as she and Applejack seemed to be getting along quite well, and the aromatherapist would have been most likely a spa pony to know the location of the apple farmer. Now there's an idea. Getting Applejack to try out some of these aromatherapy sessions. Rarity thought. Sandalwood knows how to make the whole thing simply divine, and I bet after all Applejack's been through, she could use one. So imagine her surprise as none other than Applejack was walking out of the spa, looking around as she didn't want to be followed. Then, putting on the most fake smile possible, when she realized Rarity was coming toward her. Applejack! There you are! You've had every pony way sick for that whole thing of dog chasing. Did I now? I didn't blame the cause of this. Well, of course you didn't, darling. But now that I've found you, we need to... Rarity didn't sniff the air. Are you in Centel number 450? When did you, of all ponies, stop wearing top-tier perfumes? Applejack glanced. Of all ponies who could have found it had to be the one who knew the most about perfumes. Fancy ones at that. While the work mare usually didn't mind perfumes, she had a special distaste for Chantel number 50, because it had been her mother's favorite. And after the tragedy that claimed the apple parents, the heartbroken filly couldn't bear being anywhere near that Pacific perfume because of the memories it brought up. As an adult mare, Applejack found the memories weren't as bad, but Chantel number 50 was the one Sandalwood insisted would help cover up the smell of whatever it was Applejack's body was doing to attract dogs. Sandalwood suggested I should try wearing some because they're, Oh, you don't need to tell me, Applejack. I can already tell why. So... Who's the star you got your eye on? Don't worry at all, darling. I'll be sure to be discreet. In addition to the personal problems Applejack had with number 50, the perfume carried one other social trait that was born simply out of how upper class it was treated. When not worn by a married mare, the presence of the perfume implied the wearer wanted to make a very good impression on some pony they were interested in. This was an issue for Applejack, simply because there was no ponies he was interested in at the moment. Well, I'm not wearing it for that reason.
Oh, really, Applejack, dear, you can't fool me. So perhaps it's a mare you have your eyes on?
Oh, for Pete's sake, what is it with y'all thinking I'm interested in females?
It was at that time Sandalwood exited the spa to try to lend some support to the mare, who truly was doing a bad job of covering things up.
Oh, hey, Rarity. What are you doing out here? Hello, Sandalwood. Applejack apparently here caused some kind of ruckus in the town. Vegas! Involving the entire dog population. So the others and I were going around looking for her. And now she tells me that you suggested she wear Chantel number 50, but will explain why. Perhaps you would be willing to try to help me understand this strange concern for her outwardly impressions?
Applejack glanced over at Sandalwood, pleading for help, while that fake grin remained plastered to her face. Mentally, Sandalwood faced Hoof. She didn't want to do this, but it was either that or break a pinky promise. Lyra said breaking pinky promises was just one rank above die horribly on the things not to ever do list. Actually, she's not wearing it for that kind of thing. It's actually because of a mistake I made.
A mistake?
Asked Rarity, shocked at the sudden admittance of guilt for something.
But darling, your skills of perfumes and scents is unmatched. Whatever are you talking about? Making a mistake with those amazing talents of yours.
I asked Applejack here to come help me with an experimental new concoction that I could add to my inventory. However, while my cutie mark says I'm good with using scents and other aromatherapy materials, it doesn't mean I'm a good alchemist. That whole business with the dogs, they thought they smelled natural dog hormones, the kind that signal when a dog is heat. But really, it was just my attempt at mixing chemicals and testing out an Applejack here that caused the whole mess. Applejack made a mental note to send some free apple pies Sandalwood's way. It was clear how much pride the pony had in her very unique talents with aromatherapy. So, to take a minor fall for something that she didn't do was really sticking her neck out here.
Really? I didn't know that sort of thing could be done. As for you, Applejack, apparently you're due for some good luck after all these mishaps and such, no?
Applejack's grin turned from fake to real at that comment. I reckon I do. All this crazy nonsense is making me think I stepped in some of that poison joke again. Like this is the result of all that. In reality, Applejack knew perfectly well she hadn't stepped in any poison joke. She learned to avoid those patches of humiliation during her midnight runs in Everfree.
Well, since you're all spruced up, thanks to Sandalwood, let's go find the others and let them know you're all right.
With a nod from Applejack and a bidding from Sandalwood good day, Rarity turned and trotted off. Applejack was about to leave, but Sandalwood stopped her.
Look, Applejack, I'm willing to try and help you keep this werewolf thing a secret. And I'm sure Lyra doesn't have much of a choice but to help as well. But I think I can speak for both of us in that we prefer not to get involved as much as possible. Just hang in there, and I'm sure things will improve from here.
Thanks, Sandalwood. Means a lot. Applejack then hurried up to catch up with her fashionista friend. As Sandalwood walked towards off town, she couldn't help but wonder just how deep a rabbit hole she inadvertently got herself and Lyra sucked into by agreeing to help hide a werewolf in plain sight of every pony.